Right now, there are 3 SUVs sitting on dealership lots collecting dust, and nobody's even looking at them. Meanwhile, people are lining up to overpay for a brand new Toyota that hasn't even proven itself yet. Here's the twist. These 3 forgotten SUVs will hit 500,000 miles, while that shiny new Toyota is already shopping for a new transmission. And honestly, one of them costs less than a decent used motorcycle. So if you enjoy throwing money away, click off this video now. But if you like keeping it, stick around. If I told you there's an SUV out there that most people scroll right past on every used car website, and yet mechanics around the world quietly buy it for their own families, you'd probably think I was making that up. But I'm not. Meet the Mitsubishi ASX, or as some of you know it, the Outlander Sport. This is the SUV that Mitsubishi somehow built to be nearly indestructible and then completely forgot to tell anyone about it. Seriously, their marketing department must have been on a permanent vacation because this thing is one of the best-kept secrets in the entire automotive world. People will spend hours researching the latest trendy crossover, comparing trim levels and ambient lighting colors, and meanwhile the ASX is just sitting there in the corner of the lot, like the quiet kid in school who ends up becoming a billionaire. Let's talk about what's actually under the hood, because this is where the story gets really interesting. The ASX came equipped with a 2-liter, 4-cylinder, naturally aspirated engine producing around 148 horsepower. Now, I already know some of you are thinking that sounds underwhelming, and honestly, on paper, it kinda is. But here's what you need to understand about engines. The ones that last forever are almost never the ones with impressive spec sheets. They're the ones that were designed with massive engineering margins, and that's exactly what Mitsubishi did here. This engine uses a timing chain instead of a belt, which means there's no ticking time bomb waiting to snap at 60,000 miles and destroy your entire top end. The MIVEC variable valve timing system optimizes performance and efficiency without adding the kind of complexity that leads to expensive breakdowns. There are no turbos to blow, no direct injection systems gunking up with carbon deposits over time, and no fragile high-pressure fuel pumps waiting to leave you stranded in a parking lot. It runs on regular fuel, it sips it modestly, and it just keeps going. This engine is basically the automotive equivalent of that one friend who never complains, never causes drama, and always shows up when you need them. You don't realize how valuable they are until everyone else lets you down. Now let's address the transmission, because this is where you need to pay close attention. Mitsubishi fitted the ASX with a CVT on most models, and I know that word alone makes some of you nervous. And fair enough, CVTs have earned a mixed reputation in the industry. But here's the thing. Not all CVTs are created equal. The unit Mitsubishi used is a Jatco-sourced transmission that was specifically calibrated for the modest power output of that 2-liter engine. That matters enormously because it means the CVT is never being pushed anywhere near its stress limits under normal driving. It's essentially living a relaxed life, which is exactly how you want a transmission to operate. The key to longevity with this gearbox, and I cannot stress this enough, is fluid maintenance. If the previous owner changed the CVT fluid every 30 to 40,000 miles using the correct specification, that transmission will be with you for the long haul without drama. But if they subscribe to the myth that CVT fluid is lifetime and never touched it, you could be inheriting problems that won't show up on a test drive, but will absolutely show up 6 months later when it's too late. So when you're shopping, ask for service records, and if the seller can't provide them, factor in an immediate fluid change as part of your purchase budget. It's cheap insurance for peace of mind. The all-wheel drive system is something that genuinely sets the ASX apart from a lot of competitors in this price range, and this is where Mitsubishi's heritage actually plays a starring role. We're talking about the same company that built the Lancer Evolution, the same brand that dominated the Dakar Rally and made Tommy Mäkinen a household name in motorsport. Now, obviously, the ASX isn't a rally car, but the DNA is in there. The system features 3 selectable modes. You've got 2-wheel drive for everyday commuting and maximum fuel economy, an automatic mode that intelligently distributes torque between the front and rear axles when it senses slip, and a lock mode that forces a more even power split for genuinely slippery conditions like deep snow, mud, or that gravel road your GPS insists is a shortcut, even though it clearly isn't. For the price point this vehicle sits at, having a competent and proven all-wheel drive system like this is genuinely rare. Most competitors in this bracket either offer front-wheel drive only, or both on a basic reactive system that only kicks in after you've already lost traction. The ASX is proactive, and that's a real difference you'll feel when the weather turns nasty. Let's talk about the interior, and I'm going to be honest with you here because that's what this channel is about. The cabin of the ASX is basic. The materials aren't soft touch, the design isn't going to win any awards, and if you're coming from something more premium, your first impression might be underwhelming. But here's what nobody ever tells you about basic interiors. They survive. They age gracefully in a way that tech-loaded dashboards simply don't. Every touchscreen is a future repair bill. Every motorized seat adjustment is a motor that will eventually fail, usually with the seat stuck in the worst possible position. Every ambient lighting module is another thing pulling power and another thing that can glitch. The ASX gives you physical knobs, tactile buttons, and controls that work the way controls are supposed to work. 10 years from now, owners of fancier crossovers will be replacing infotainment units that cost more than the ASX's entire resale value, and you'll still be pressing buttons that do exactly what they say they do. There's genuine value in simplicity, even if it doesn't photograph well for social media. Maintenance costs on this vehicle is where the ASX truly makes the competition look foolish. Replacement parts are so affordable that the first time you price out a brake job or a set of suspension components, you'll genuinely wonder if the parts website made an error. We're talking about an SUV that you can keep on the road for a fraction of what it costs to maintain most of its rivals. And because the engine bay isn't crammed full of complicated accessories and tightly packaged components, independent mechanics can work on it efficiently without needing specialized tools or spending extra hours just getting access to basic parts. That translates directly into lower labor costs every single time you visit a shop. Over 5 years of ownership, the savings add up to a genuinely shocking number. Now, if you're convinced and heading out to look at one, here's your survival guide. First, get underneath the vehicle and inspect the undercarriage carefully for rust. The ASX, particularly in earlier model years, is not the most corrosion-resistant SUV on the market. If it spent its life in an area with heavy winters and salted roads, you could find significant deterioration on the subframe and along the floor pan. Surface rust is manageable, but structural rust is a deal-breaker, so don't skip this step. Second, pay attention to the front suspension. The lower control arm bushings are a known wear item, and when they go, you'll hear a clunking or knocking sound over bumps and rough pavement. The good news is the repair is cheap and straightforward, but it's a useful negotiating point if you catch it during the test drive. Third, during that test drive, listen closely to the CVT. A healthy unit should be smooth and essentially quiet during acceleration. If you hear any whining, droning, or hesitation during speed changes, walk away, because CVT repairs are never cheap, regardless of the brand. Fourth, on all-wheel drive models, ask specifically about the rear differential coupling service history. This component needs its fluid changed periodically, and if the previous owner neglected it, the unit can develop wear that leads to expensive problems down the road. And finally, check every electrical component in the cabin. Run the windows up and down, test the air conditioning on full code, cycle through the lights, and make sure everything responds the way it should. Electrical gremlins aren't common on the ASX, but when buying any used vehicle, 5 minutes of checking now saves you $500 of surprises later. The Mitsubishi ASX is not the kind of vehicle that anyone brags about owning. It won't turn a single head in any parking lot on the planet, and nobody at a dinner party has ever said, "Tell me more about your ASX." But here's what it will do. At 5 in the morning, when it's pitch dark and freezing outside, you'll turn that key and it will start. When it's pouring rain and the roads are slick, that all-wheel drive system will keep you planted without you even noticing it's working. And at the end of the year, when you look at what you spent on maintenance, you'll smile because the number is almost embarrassingly low. People spend twice the money chasing badges and trend reports, while the ASX just quietly does its job and asks for almost nothing. Maybe it's time to stop scrolling past it.
All right, before we jump into the next SUV on this list, and trust me, you don't want to miss it, let me ask you something real quick. If you could only drive one SUV for the rest of your life, just one, and it had to take you to 500,000 miles with no excuses, what are you picking? Drop it in the comments because I genuinely want to see what you guys come up with. And honestly, some of you are going to name cars that belong in a museum, and I'm here for it. Now, while you're down there typing, do me a huge favor and smash that like button, because every time you do, a neglected SUV on a used car lot finally finds a loving home. And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you even doing? Hit subscribe, tap that bell, because we drop videos like this every week, and I promise your wallet will thank you later. All right, let's keep going, because this next one is going to surprise a lot of people.
Now, this next one is going to be controversial, and I already know some of you are reaching for that comment button with something spicy to say, but hear me out first. Because if there's one SUV on this entire list that has been more unfairly judged, more ruthlessly mocked, and more aggressively overlooked than anything else on four wheels, it's the Renault Duster. Yes, Renault. Take a breath. I know the brand doesn't exactly scream bulletproof reliability in a lot of people's minds, and if your only experience with French cars is your uncle's old Peugeot that spent more time at the mechanic than on the road, I completely understand the skepticism. But the Duster isn't really a typical French car. In fact, it was developed under the Dacia division, which Renault specifically created to build vehicles for markets where failure is not an option. Because people in those markets can't afford a second car, they can't afford breakdowns, and they definitely can't afford overpriced dealer repairs. The Duster was engineered from day one to survive places where roads are an afterthought and service centers are a 3-hour drive away. And that philosophy, that absolute commitment to rugged simplicity, is exactly what makes it one of the most underrated SUVs you can buy today. Let's get into the engineering, because this is where the Duster starts winning over the skeptics. The most common powertrain you'll find is a 1.6-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder petrol engine producing around 114 horsepower. And look, I'm not going to stand here and tell you that number is thrilling, because it isn't. But what it is proven. This engine block is derived from a Nissan partnership architecture that has been refined over decades across multiple continents. We're talking about millions of units produced and tested in conditions that would make most European-designed engines file for early retirement. It uses a timing chain, multi-point fuel injection, and an aluminum alloy head that keeps weight manageable without sacrificing durability. There are no turbochargers, no variable geometry intake systems, no electrically actuated anything that's going to fail and leave you staring at a repair estimate with too many digits. Renault deliberately left all of that out, and that decision wasn't laziness, it was strategy. Every component they didn't add is a component that can never break. In some markets, you'll also find an excellent 1.5-liter diesel, the legendary K9K unit that taxi drivers and fleet operators swear by because it routinely crosses 400,000 kilometers without a major overhaul. If you find a diesel Duster that's been properly maintained, you're essentially looking at a vehicle that doesn't know how to quit. The gearbox situation is refreshingly straightforward. The Duster was offered with a 5-speed or 6-speed manual transmission for most of its production life, and if you can find a manual, that's the one you want. These gearboxes are mechanically simple, extremely well proven, and when something eventually does wear out after a very long time, the repair costs are genuinely laughable compared to anything involving a CVT or a dual-clutch automated unit. Now, Renault did offer an automatic option in certain markets, and while it's not terrible, it doesn't share the same bulletproof reputation. The manual is where the Duster's reliability story really shines, and honestly, driving a manual in an SUV like this just feels right. It connects you to the vehicle in a way that makes every drive feel a little more intentional, and that's not something you can put a price on. The 4-wheel drive system available on the Duster deserves special attention because it punches so far above its price class that it's almost unfair. It uses an electronically controlled multi-plate clutch system that offers 3 modes: 2-wheel drive for everyday efficiency, automatic for when conditions get unpredictable, and a lock mode that sends serious torque to the rear wheels when things get genuinely rough. Now here's what's remarkable. This isn't just a marketing gimmick with a button on the dashboard. People drive Dusters through Saharan sand, Siberian snow, South American mountain passes, and unpaved African highways every single day. This vehicle has been tested by real life in the harshest possible classrooms, and it graduated at the top. There are Dusters in rural India with over 300,000 kilometers on the clock still working as daily drivers on roads that would rattle a Land Rover's fillings loose. You simply cannot buy that kind of real-world validation, and the fact that this SUV costs a fraction of what most people spend on something far less capable is genuinely mind-blowing. The cabin follows the same philosophy as everything else on this vehicle, which is function over fashion, and nothing wasted.
The dashboard is straightforward, the materials are hard-wearing rather than luxurious, and the layout prioritizes space and practicality over aesthetics. Some reviewers have called the interior cheap, and technically they're not wrong, but they're missing the point entirely. The Duster's interior is designed to take abuse. Those hard plastic surfaces that automotive journalists love to complain about don't scratch, they don't stain, they don't squeak over time, and they clean up with a damp cloth after you've spent the weekend hauling camping gear, muddy dogs, or bags of cement. Try doing that in a vehicle with piano black trim and soft-touch leather, and you'll spend the next week crying over scuff marks. The Duster doesn't care. It was built by people who understood that a vehicle's interior is a workspace, not a living room. And that mentality is liberating when you actually use your SUV like an SUV. Now here's something that truly separates the Duster from almost everything else at its price point: ground clearance. The Duster sits at around 210 millimeters of ground clearance, which is significantly higher than most compact crossovers that pretend to be capable off-road but would struggle with a steep driveway. That extra height gives you a meaningful advantage on rough terrain, deep snow, flooded roads, and those situations where you need to mount a curb or navigate a construction zone without holding your breath. Combined with the short overhangs and the relatively compact footprint, the Duster can go places that most vehicles in this class wouldn't even attempt. It's not a rock crawler, nobody's claiming that, but for real-world adventures beyond the pavement, it delivers more genuine capability per dollar than almost anything else on the market. Alright, if you're sold on the idea and heading out to find one, here's what you absolutely need to check before handing over any money. Number 1, and this is the big one, inspect the timing chain tensioner on petrol models, particularly the earlier production years. Some units developed a rattle on cold starts that indicates the tensioner is wearing, and while the repair isn't catastrophic, catching it early saves you money and prevents any chance of chain slack causing bigger issues down the road. Number 2, check the condition of the rear suspension bushings and shock absorbers. The Duster is often driven hard on rough roads, which is exactly what it's built for, but that means the rear end takes a beating over time. Worn shocks will make the rear end feel floaty and bouncy, and you'll spot it immediately on a test drive if you know what to look for. Number 3, on four-wheel drive models, ask about the transfer case fluid service history. This component needs periodic maintenance, and owners who ignored it may have caused internal wear that leads to noise or engagement issues when switching modes. A quick test is to cycle through all 3 drive modes during your test drive and listen for any grinding, clicking, or hesitation. Number 4, examine the clutch feel on manual models. Because the Duster attracts owners who use it in demanding conditions, clutch wear can vary dramatically depending on how the vehicle was driven. A slipping or high-biting clutch means a replacement is on the horizon, and while it's not expensive, it's something you want priced into your deal. And finally, check the condition of the wheel bearings by listening for any humming or droning at highway speeds. The Duster's bearings are robust, but they do wear, and replacement is straightforward as long as you catch it before any damage spreads. The Renault Duster is the SUV that the automotive snobbery industry wants you to ignore. It doesn't have a prestigious badge, it doesn't have a premium interior, and absolutely nobody is going to give you a nod of approval at a traffic light. But it does something that most expensive SUVs struggle to do, which is work relentlessly without complaining, cost almost nothing to maintain, and still be ready for more when everything else has already given up. Millions of people across dozens of countries already know this, and the only reason it remains a secret in some markets is because people haven't been paying attention. Well, now you're paying attention, and that changes everything.
Alright, we've saved the absolute best for last, and honestly, this one almost feels like cheating. Because while the first 2 SUVs on this list are about stretching every dollar and getting maximum reliability for minimum investment, this final one is about getting a legitimate luxury experience that was engineered by people who think breaking down is a personal insult. I'm talking about the Accurate MDX. And if that name doesn't immediately make your ears perk up, let me put it to you this way. This is a Honda in a tailored suit. Underneath that premium badge, behind that leather interior, and beneath that refined ride quality sits the same obsessive Japanese engineering philosophy that made Honda one of the most trusted names in automotive history. Except with the MDX, they gave it a nicer outfit and charged a premium for it, and then the used market completely forgot about it.
People are out here paying top dollar for German SUVs that need a second mortgage to maintain, and meanwhile, the accurate MDX is sitting at half the price, doing everything better and lasting twice as long. If that doesn't make you rethink every car purchase you've ever made, I don't know what will. Let's start with the heart of this machine, because that's where the magic lives. The second and third generation MDX models, which are the sweet spot for used buyers right now, came equipped with a 3.5-liter V6 engine from Honda's legendary J-Series family. And when I say legendary, I'm not using that word loosely. The J-Series V6 is one of the most celebrated engine platforms in modern automotive history. It uses an aluminum block and heads to keep weight down, a single overhead cam design per bank with Honda's VTEC variable valve timing system, and a timing belt on earlier versions or a timing chain on later ones, depending on the generation. This engine routinely crosses 300,000 miles with nothing more than regular oil changes, coolant flushes, and the occasional spark plug swap. There are documented cases of J-Series engines hitting 400,000 miles and beyond, still running on original internals, still pulling strong, still refusing to quit. The engineering tolerances Honda used in this family of engines are so tight and so well thought out that wear happens at a glacial pace compared to almost anything else in the segment. Your German luxury SUV is scheduling its third visit to the dealer this year, while the MDX hasn't even thought about its first. That's not an exaggeration. That's just what happens when an engine is designed by people who take reliability personally. The transmission is an area where generation matters, and I need to be completely transparent with you here because this channel doesn't hide the bad news. The early second-generation MDX models from around 2001 through 2003 used a 5-speed automatic that had documented issues with premature wear, particularly in the third and fifth gears. Honda acknowledged this problem and made significant improvements in subsequent model years. So if you're shopping for an MDX, the golden era starts from 2007 onward with the third generation, which received a completely revised 5-speed and later a 6-speed automatic that proved to be dramatically more durable and refined. If you're looking at a third-generation model with the 6-speed, you're getting a transmission that matches the engine's longevity almost perfectly. The key, as always, is verifying that the transmission fluid was changed regularly. Honda's automatic transmissions are particular about their fluid, and using the correct Honda specification ATF on the recommended schedule is non-negotiable. This isn't the place to cut corners, and any seller who tells you the fluid is lifetime is someone you should walk away from immediately. Now let's talk about what makes the MDX special beyond just the powertrain, because this is where the value proposition becomes almost absurd for used buyers. The MDX came standard with features that competitors charge serious money for as options. We're talking about a super handling all-wheel drive system known as SHAW that Honda developed in-house and that remains one of the most sophisticated torque vectoring systems ever fitted to a production SUV. This isn't a simple front-to-rear power split. The SHAW system can send up to 70% of torque to the rear axle and then distribute it independently between the left and right rear wheels. In practice, this means the MDX rotates into corners with a precision and agility that feels completely wrong for a vehicle this size. It shouldn't handle this well, but it does. And once you've experienced it, every other SUV in this class feels disconnected and lazy by comparison. People pay a fortune for performance SUVs from European brands that can't match what the MDX does naturally, and they do it because they never bothered to test drive an Acura. Their loss, your gain. The interior of the MDX is where you really start to feel like you've gotten away with something. We're talking about genuine leather seating surfaces, dual zone or tri-zone automatic climate control depending on the model year, a power tailgate, heated front seats, and on higher trims, you're getting ventilated seats, a premium surround sound audio system, and navigation. The build quality is meticulous in that way only Japanese luxury brands seem to achieve, where every panel fits perfectly, every switch has a satisfying weight to it, and nothing rattles after 100,000 miles of use. The third row seating is functional enough for kids or shorter adults on regular trips, which gives you genuine 7-passenger capability in a package that drives like a much smaller vehicle. Try getting this level of equipment and this level of build quality in a German or American luxury SUV at the same used price, and you'll quickly realize the MDX is playing a completely different game. Maintenance and ownership costs are where the MDX delivers its knockout punch. Because it shares so much of its mechanical DNA with Honda's mainstream lineup, parts availability is excellent and pricing is far below what you'd expect for a luxury badge. Brake components, suspension parts, filters, sensors, All of it is priced closer to Honda Pilot territory than to anything from Lexus, BMW, or Mercedes. Independent mechanics love working on these because the engineering is logical, the engine bay is accessible, and diagnostic work is straightforward. You get the prestige of a luxury SUV with ownership costs that feel almost mainstream. Over a 5-year period, the savings compared to a similarly aged European luxury SUV can genuinely add up to thousands, and that's money you keep in your pocket instead of handing to a service advisor who already knows you by first name. Before you head out shopping, here's your checklist, and please take this seriously because even the best vehicles have their weak points. First, check the power steering system carefully. The MDX uses an electronically assisted power steering rack on later models, but earlier versions had a hydraulic system that can develop leaks at the pump and the high pressure lines over time. Look for any fluid residue around the steering components and pay attention to any whining noise when turning the wheel at low speeds. Second, on models equipped with the entertainment and navigation system, test every single function thoroughly. The early touchscreen units can develop dead spots and slow response times, and while this isn't a mechanical issue, replacing these head units can be surprisingly expensive. Third, inspect the front and rear brake calipers for sticking, especially if the vehicle hasn't been driven regularly. A sticking caliper causes uneven pad wear and can overheat the rotor, so check for any pulling during braking and look for uneven pad thickness when you inspect visually. Fourth, examine the catalytic converters. The MDX uses 2 of them due to the V6 configuration, and on higher mileage examples, they can start to degrade internally, which triggers check engine lights and causes a noticeable drop in performance. A quick scan with an OBD reader for any pending catalyst efficiency codes will tell you everything you need to know. And finally, take a careful look at the condition of the valve cover gaskets, particularly on higher mileage examples. These gaskets can dry out and begin to seep oil, and while the repair itself isn't major, it's a telltale sign of overall maintenance attention and a useful bargaining chip during negotiations. The MDX is living proof that the best deals in the automotive world are hiding in plain sight. It gives you Honda reliability wrapped in luxury packaging, a driving experience that embarrasses vehicles costing twice as much, and ownership costs that won't keep you awake at night. Honestly, at this point, you're not even making a smart decision. You're making the only decision that makes sense.
And that wraps up our list of 3 dirt-cheap SUVs that nobody buys, but will outlast every new Toyota on the road today for 500,000 miles. We went from the secretly indestructible Mitsubishi ASX to the go-anywhere, survive-anything Renault Duster, all the way to the luxury sleeper that is the Acura MDX. 3 completely different vehicles, 3 completely different price points, but one thing in common, they refuse to die, and the market is practically giving them away. Now here's what I need from you. If this video saved you from making a bad decision, or if it opened your eyes to an SUV you never even considered before, smash that like button so hard your phone feels it. Subscribe to this channel and tap that notification bell, because every single week we find vehicles that the market is sleeping on and we bring them straight to you before everyone else catches on. Share this video with that one friend who's about to overpay for something unreliable. You know exactly who I'm talking about, and do them the biggest favor of their year. Drop a comment telling me which of these 3 you'd actually buy, or better yet, tell me if you already own one and what your mileage is sitting at, because I guarantee some of you are about to shock everyone in this comment section. Thank you for watching, thank you for being part of this community, and I'll see you in the next one.